The Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 6 has been out for a couple of weeks now, and with its sleek, updated design and of course all the camera versatility, iPhone users and even Olympic athletes are interested or at least curious about the new Flip. The one big part that always held people back is the camera quality, but the Flip 6 now has an upgraded camera system that performs much better than I expected, and I've really been enjoying the camera experience. With the Flip 6 starting at $1,099, which is actually a little more than the iPhone 15 Pro, I wanted to put these two up against each other and see how the new Flip's camera system compares to the highly touted iPhone 15 Pro's cameras. The iPhone definitely has an edge in hardware with the extra telephoto lens, but the real results tell a much different story, and I think you'd be surprised. Okay, so in perfect daylight conditions, most of the time the photos between the Flip and the iPhone look very similar. Especially for pictures of landscapes, buildings, and city streets, the color science is more similar than not. Even though the iPhone is pixel binning at 24 megapixels compared to the lower 12 megapixel binning on the Flip, level of detail and image quality are also very similar between two phones, from 1x to even 2x. Of course, since the iPhone has the telephoto lens with 3x optical, 3x and up definitely captures more detail on the iPhone. But I personally take most of my photos from 1.2x to 2x, so I was pleasantly surprised at how well the Flip 6 was holding up versus the iPhone 15 Pro just in terms of retaining detail. But if you look a little closer, you will start to notice a ton of stylistic differences in post-processing. In general, the Flip 6 keeps things relatively untouched with less sharpening and lower contrast, giving off more of a natural, cleaner look with a very slight pink or red tint. The iPhone goes the other direction with more sharpening, higher contrast, and a very slight green tint. Sometimes the iPhone does tend to over-sharpen and over-contrast, unfortunately giving it more of a processed look with rougher details that doesn't look too nice compared to the Flip 6. This type of post-processing does sometimes result in more interesting, moody photos for cityscapes and landscapes, but in general, I do prefer the Flip's post-processing. The difference is more apparent when taking photos of people. With less sharpening and contrast, the Flip slightly brings up shadows and highlights while keeping details soft to make for more flattering portraits. The iPhone tends to kill shadows and ups the contrast, which is less flattering for facial features, and dark hair colors just don't look quite as accurate. I also found skin tones to be a little more accurate on the Flip 6 too, at least for East Asians like me and my wife. While this is the case when there's harsh, bright rays or lens flares, the Flip seems to struggle more than the iPhone. The Flip seems to let the light source take over the image where you use the vibrance, a bit of the focus, and just doesn't look quite as nice. On the other hand, the iPhone does a good job correcting for these situations. Video recording is a slightly different story. When standing still, the video stabilization is identically good on both phones, but iPhone does a slightly better job when walking and a much better job when using any bit of zoom. The Flip seems to get some noticeable jitters, especially when using zoom. Though I was surprised that even in video recording, these two phones had very similar level of detail and video quality, which is great news for the Flip. On that note, I actually prefer the general color accuracy and vibrance on the Flip over the iPhone. The iPhone seems to try and brighten the scene a little too much, taking away colors and making the scene more dull than it actually is, but then again, when there is a harsh light source, the Flip starts to struggle and lose a lot of detail and focus. In these situations, the iPhone does a much better job in adjusting and making the footage a lot more natural with more detail. For selfie video quality, it's good on both phones. I do prefer the slightly wider angle on the iPhone, but almost no difference with similar processing styles. But weirdly enough, I do prefer the iPhone in this situation. The Flip tries to do a little too much to brighten up the scene and its shadows. In slightly tougher conditions indoors, we get a bit of a different look at these cameras. When taking photos of a close-up subject, the iPhone shows a shallower depth of field, which gives off more of a photographic vibe. It seems that the iPhone actually tries to do more brightness balancing while the Flip gets a lot more contrasty. But with better color correction and reproduction, I do prefer the style on the Flip's photos, though this is definitely more of a personal preference. With that said, the iPhone tends to have slightly better performance in tougher lighting conditions. The iPhone sharpening actually helps here and makes the image look better focused and high quality. The Flip is smoothing the details a little too much, making the image look worse from far away, so in these situations I would prefer a bit more sharpening. For zoomed in 2x shots, I found both phones to capture fairly murky photos that I wasn't too happy about, but you have your usual difference of the Flip's softer approach while iPhone sharpens more. For pictures of faces and people, same comments as my thoughts for the daylight photos where I did prefer the Flip. For the selfie camera, it's more of a toss-up. Sometimes the Flip has nicer colors, dynamic range, and captures more details, and sometimes the iPhone does a better job at all those things. But the major difference here is that this is a Flip, so you can just flip it over to use a rear camera for selfies instead, which is such a big advantage for selfies and for vlogging. Then in lower light situations during the night, there was definitely more of a distinction. When focused on a light source, the Flip tends to hard focus and go all in, killing everything else, while the iPhone tries to save some details in the shadows. Obviously, with these different approaches, the Flip's photos look less grainy and does look higher quality, but this is more of a stylistic difference, because maybe you do want some of those details to be brightened up, so you might prefer the iPhone here. I will say that when there is a little bit more light, the iPhone still tries a little bit too much to brighten up shadows and the photos just look worse off. Even worse is with a wide focus, the iPhone's low light photos quickly get very murky. They're way too over sharpened with really rough details compared to the better balanced softer images on the Flip 6. There's less grain, more natural looking, and just overall cleaner on the Flip. So for low light stills, I generally prefer the Flip 6. But on the video side, the iPhone does a much better job in the nighttime. It gets much cleaner footage with noticeably better stabilization. Lens reflections are worse on the iPhone, but when you're recording videos of things in the nighttime, I generally just prefer the results on the iPhone. Similar story with the selfie camera comparison, where the iPhone does a slightly better job with more detail, better stabilization, and dynamic range. But like I mentioned before, the Flip can flip, so you can just use the rear camera for selfie video and it looks so much better all around compared to the iPhone selfie camera since it is using the main camera sensor. Okay, so putting everything together, even though the iPhone 15 Pro has clear hardware advantages over the Galaxy Z Flip 6 and it obviously wins in terms of zoom range and depth, I mostly prefer the photos coming from the Flip 6 in most situations. It produced cleaner, softer images most of the time, even up to 2x zoomed in photos. On the video side, the iPhone wins there as the more reliable shooter, better stabilization most of the time, and doesn't lose out much when the lighting gets tough. While the front-facing cameras are a toss-up, the Flip's ability to use a rear camera for selfies makes it super flexible and a much better option for vlogging and shooting short-form content like TikToks. So with all these in mind, I personally prefer the camera experience on the Galaxy Z Flip 6. And I don't think iPhone users are missing out in terms of the cameras when coming over to the Flip. But those are just my thoughts. Let me know in the comments which phone's cameras you preferred. I'm planning on doing more comparisons just like this, so definitely make sure to subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys on the next video.